The chapel smelled of lilies and the salt air drifting in from Charleston Harbor. I sat rigid in the front pew, my hands clasped so tightly they ached. My eyes fixed on the polished oak casket that held my only son, Adrian. The stained glass windows cast gentle colors over the altar, but no light could soften the weight in my chest. Every hymn felt like it might shatter me. Then the silence broke. The back doors creaked open, heels clicked against wooden floorboards, and every head turned. Veronica Hale entered draped in black silk, her chin high, a faint smile curling her lips. 10 years absent, 10 years without so much as a call. Yet here she was, less like a widow and more like a woman, arriving late to a business meeting. "I am here," she announced, her voice sharp, and rehearsed to claim what belongs to me, the $10 million my husband left behind. Gasps rippled through the pews. I kept my eyes on Adrian's name engraved in brass. He wasn't even laid to rest, and already she treated his life as spoils of war. A young man in an ill-fitting suit scrambled to her side, clutching a folder as though it could shield him. As his legal spouse, he stammered, "Mrs. Hale is entitled under South Carolina law to inherit the estate." His words tumbled awkwardly, pulled from textbooks, not conviction. Murmurs rose. I felt gazes sliding toward me, some pitying, some curious, as though the weight of money pressed more heavily than grief itself. Adrian had warned me in the stillness of his hospital room. "Don't let her back in," he whispered. "She'll come if she thinks there's anything to take. Promise me you'll stand strong." I had nodded through tears, and now his warning was iron in my spine. Veronica's smirk deepened at my silence, mistaking it for surrender. She expected an outburst, but I remained still, letting her words expose her. The hush broke when another figure rose from the pews. Sophia Grant, calm and deliberate, walked to the front heels, measured a slim leather folder in her hands. She opened it, the rustle of paper, loud in the chapel, and lifted a document bearing the seal of Charleston County. "This," she said firmly, "is the certified divorce decree between Adrian Caldwell and Veronica Hale, dated 10 years ago, with both parties renouncing future claims. Binding and final." Gasps again. Veronica faltered, her smile cracking before she forced it back. "That document was coerced," she protested, her voice, rising, eyes cutting toward me. Clearly, his mother orchestrated this. I lifted my head at last and met her gaze. "You are not his wife," I said, each word clipped and steady, carrying to every corner of the church. The silence that followed was heavier than grief itself. Even her lawyer shrank back. Veronica's face hardened, but doubt flickered in her eyes. She had not expected resistance. The service ended in uneasy quiet. Veronica swept out her lawyer, trailing whispers clinging to her like smoke. I stayed until the last mourner drifted away. Sophia approached, her expression softened by something almost maternal. "Come with me," she said gently. I followed her through misty Charleston streets to her modest office above a row of shops. She pulled a flash drive from a drawer and set it before me. "Adrian recorded this 9 months ago. He wanted me to keep it sealed until necessary. I think the time has come." My hands trembled as she loaded the video. Adrian's face filled the screen, thinner, pale, but steady. "Mom," he began quietly, "if you're watching this, it means I'm gone. I left everything to you because you never left me. You were there through every night, every pain. If she comes back, Veronica, don't doubt yourself. Stand firm. I chose you." The video ended, the screen dark. I replayed it, drinking in every word, each syllable pressing into me like a seal. I was no longer only a grieving mother. I was the guardian of his wishes. This was not about money. It was about truth, about keeping his story intact. Veronica would not erase a decade of absence with silk and entitlement. His voice gave me strength. The storm was coming, but I would not bend. By the next morning, Veronica had already begun her campaign. My phone lit with messages from friends and distant cousins, each forwarding her posts. There she was on social media, draped in black, clutching an old wedding photograph of her and Adrian. The caption read, "Goodbye to the love of my life. 10 years apart, but my heart never stopped loving him. May justice be done." The comments poured in broken heart emojis, prayers, strangers calling her brave, insisting no widow should be robbed of her rightful inheritance. Some even named me outright, branding me cruel, greedy, manipulative. Reporters began calling before noon, their voices polite but sharp, eager for a story. One asked if I had coerced Adrian into rewriting his will. Another pressed about family rifts. I hung up each time, but their words clung to me like smoke. The world always seemed to believe the first voice it heard, and Veronica had made sure it was hers. When I met Sophia that afternoon, she already had printouts spread across her desk. Screenshots, hashtags, trending, even clips from a local news segment portraying Veronica as a tragic figure. "She isn't fighting in court yet," Sophia said, tapping the papers. "She's fighting here in public opinion, and if we stay silent, her story hardens." "I won't beg for sympathy," I said, though the weight in my chest grew heavier. "That's not who Adrian was, and it isn't who I am." "You won't beg," Sophia replied evenly. "You'll tell the truth. Not in whispers, out loud." Her words echoed the certainty I had heard in Adrian's video. Truth needed a voice, not quiet endurance. For the first time since the funeral, I felt something stir inside me, not just grief, but resolve. If Veronica wanted the crowd would hear the truth. 3 days later, I walked through the side entrance of Charleston's City Hall. The auditorium was full community leaders, reporters, neighbors, former colleagues of Adrian. Banners for the Adrian Caldwell Memorial Fund hung at the front. Sophia opened the event with quiet authority, speaking about honoring Adrian's life with purpose, not scandal. Then the lights dimmed and the screen flickered. Adrian appeared seated in his apartment, his shoulders thin, his face pale, yet unwavering. "If you're watching this, I'm gone," he said. "But I want to be clear. Everything I built, everything I saved, it goes to my mother. She was there when no one else was. She never left." He paused, his eyes fixed on the lens. "This foundation is her work to carry forward, but it is my choice." The room was utterly silent. His words, time-stamped and unbroken, carried more weight than any lawyer's argument. When the video ended, Sophia displayed the will, the signed amendments, the divorce decree. Each document glowed under the projector's light, certified and undeniable. Applause rose, hesitant at first, then building into something strong, echoing against the chamber walls. The mayor extended his hand. Adrian's colleagues nodded solemnly. Neighbors wiped their eyes. I felt a weight lift, not grief, but vindication. My son had spoken louder than I ever could. At the back, Veronica stood in sunglasses, lips pressed thin. She turned abruptly, her heels clicking like gunfire as she stormed out. This time, no one followed her. But her silence didn't last. Days later, she resurfaced online with a heavily edited video. Adrian's pauses were twisted into hesitation, his words bent into doubts they had never carried. She claimed he regretted changing his will, that I had forced him in his weakest days. The response was swift and vicious. Strangers who had applauded now accused me again, cold, greedy, manipulative. I read the comments late at night until the words blurred, each one cutting like glass. For the first time since the funeral, I felt close to breaking. Sophia found me the next morning, her arms full of files. "We'll answer this," she said firmly, sliding her laptop across the desk. On screen was the uncut video, one continuous take. Adrian's voice was steady, deliberate, time-stamped with clarity. Alongside it, Sophia prepared sworn affidavits, Daniel Reyes, the oncology nurse, describing Adrian's mental sharpness. Helena Moore, his CFO, confirming his decisions were consistent and sound. Together, their testimony wove a wall that no edit could pierce. By afternoon, the full video and statements were released to the press. Slowly, the tide shifted. Blogs retracted stories, reporters softened their tone, and online fury began to wither into unease at having believed her. But Sophia's eyes stayed cool. This won't be her last strike, she warned. And she was right. That week, the summons from probate court arrived. The Charleston probate court was small, its walls lined with portraits of judges long gone, their stern gazes presiding silently over the living disputes of families. I sat in the front beside Sophia, my hands folded tightly, my eyes fixed ahead. Veronica entered minutes later, dressed in navy, her hair pinned into severe lines, her lawyer dragging a briefcase that sagged with the weight of weak arguments. She didn't glance at me, but the tension in her jaw betrayed the storm brewing behind her mask. When the hearing began, her lawyer spoke first. His voice was loud, as though volume alone could lend credibility, but it cracked under the strain of his own uncertainty. He claimed Adrian had been coerced, that illness had clouded his judgment, that I had isolated him in his final months to force him into rewriting his will. Each word was acid against my skin, accusing me not only of manipulation, but of betraying the very care I had given my son. I sat still, refusing to flinch. Sophia rose with deliberate calm. Her voice measured her movements precise. She presented the uncut video, Adrian's face pale but determined, his words clear, his decision deliberate. She read Daniel Reyes's affidavit, the nurse who had cared for Adrian daily, describing his mental clarity even on his hardest days. She introduced Helena Moore's sworn testimony confirming Adrian had continued to direct his business decisions sharply and consistently. Piece by piece, the case built itself like a fortress, every stone laid with evidence, every word unshakable. The judge leaned back, steepling his fingers. The courtroom hushed, every breath held. At last he spoke. The petition is dismissed in its entirety. The evidence submitted by the claimant is intentionally misleading. Sanctions will be imposed. For a moment, silence swallowed the room. Then the words landed fully. Veronica's face went rigid. Her lips pressed so tightly the blood drained from them. The judge continued ordering her to pay opposing legal fees, freezing her accounts until settlement, and referring her lawyer to the state bar for review. It was a ruling not just of dismissal, but of censure, a public declaration of her deceit. Veronica gathered her papers with trembling hands. She did not look at me as she left, her heels striking the floor in restless rhythm. But I had seen the flicker of panic in her eyes. The script she had rehearsed had burned to ash in front of her. I walked out with Sophia at my side, the heavy doors closing behind us like the final chapter of a book. Yet, in my heart, I knew this wasn't the end, only the turning of the battle into its final act. In the weeks that followed, the noise surrounding Adrian's name began to soften, giving way to something steadier. The Memorial Foundation launched its first scholarships, providing support for local students. Bright young faces filled with hope reminded me of the children I had once taught in the small garden by the Ashley River. Volunteers planted azaleas and live oaks in Adrian's honor, their roots sinking deep into the soil, as if promising continuity. I visited, often walking the stone paths between the flower beds, listening to the wind whisper through the branches. Sometimes I sat on a bench overlooking the water, remembering Adrian's laughter, the way his small hand had once slipped into mine during thunderstorms. The garden bloomed into living testimony, not of court battles or money, but of a life that would not be forgotten. Then one morning, an envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address, only my name scrawled in an unfamiliar hand. Inside lay a faded photograph of Adrian as a child, barefoot in the yard, with a toy sailboat clutched to his chest. Beneath it, on a torn slip of paper, was a single word: forgive. I sat with it for a long while, the edges soft between my fingers. Whether it came from Veronica, her lawyer, or some unknown hand, I could not say. But I knew some doors once closed are not meant to be reopened. I placed the photograph and note in the drawer of my desk, not as an invitation, but as a reminder. The inheritance was safe, yes. But more importantly, Adrian's wishes were intact. The fight had never truly been about money. It had been about truth, about dignity, about honoring the years of sacrifice and the love that had bound us when no one else remained. And in the end, that truth stood untarnished. The garden by the river bloomed brighter with each passing season, its colors alive with the memory of the boy I raised and the man he became. Sitting among those blossoms, I felt the quiet strength of knowing I had protected not just his legacy, but his voice. Spring came, and with it, a softer rhythm to my days. The battle with Veronica had left scars, but it also carved out a clarity I hadn't known before. The memorial foundation began to take shape in earnest. Applications arrived from students across Charleston, young people eager to study, to build, to honor Adrian's name with their own dreams. Reading their letters was like opening windows into lives unburdened by bitterness. Each essay reminded me why Adrian had wanted this. His legacy was not to be measured in dollars or court filings, but in opportunity. I devoted myself to the work meeting with board members, attending community gatherings, speaking with families who would benefit from the scholarships. For the first time since his passing, I felt a current of hope carry me. I was not only grieving, I was building. Veronica's shadow lingered for a while in gossip columns and social media whispers. Some clung to her story, unwilling to admit they had believed a lie. But her voice grew fainter with each week. Without access to Adrian's estate, without credibility in court, she had little left but bitterness. Rumors trickled in that she had left Charleston altogether, retreating to some distant city. Whether true or not, I let them drift past me. Her chapter in our lives had closed. Yet, even in her absence, I found myself replaying Adrian's video late at night. His face on the screen, thin but unbowed. His voice steady, even in the shadow of death. It became my anchor. "You never left me," he had said. Those words were the clearest truth I carried. Whenever doubt or loneliness threatened, I returned to them, and they steadied me. The garden by the Ashley River blossomed into something more than memorial. It became a gathering place. Families walked the paths on weekends, children ran among the azaleas, couples lingered on benches beneath the live oaks. Life moved through that space, vibrant and unbroken. Sometimes I sat quietly watching strangers find joy there, and I thought Adrian would have smiled to see it. One evening, as the sun slid low over the harbor, painting the sky with rose and gold, I found myself alone on the bench. A breeze carried the scent of lilies, the same scent that had filled the chapel on the day I buried my son. I closed my eyes, feeling both the ache of loss and the peace of endurance. The two had become inseparable, grief and gratitude twined together. For years, I had defined myself only as a mother, his mother. Losing him had left me hollow, but fighting for him had shown me something I hadn't expected: my own strength. I had faced betrayal accusation, even public scorn, and I had not broken. I had carried Adrian's voice forward not as an echo, but as a living force. As night deepened, the garden lights flickered on small lanterns glowing along the paths. I thought of the photograph that had arrived in the envelope Adrian, as a child, with his toy sailboat. Forgive. The word had once unsettled me. Forgive whom, Veronica, myself. Perhaps it wasn't meant for anyone specific. Perhaps it was a reminder that forgiveness was not about excusing what others had done, but about releasing their hold on your heart. I whispered into the dusk. I forgive, but I do not forget. The harbor wind carried the words away, and I felt lighter for having said them. By the time summer warmed Charleston, the first scholarships had been awarded. I stood on stage in a modest auditorium, watching young recipients step forward one by one to accept their certificates. Their eyes were wide with possibility, their families proud and tearful. When it was my turn to speak, I held no notes. My son Adrian believed in hard work and loyalty, and in the quiet strength that carries us through our hardest days. These scholarships are not just gifts. They are promises that his story will not end with grief, but with opportunity for others. His legacy is not measured in wealth, but in what we choose to build with it. Applause filled the room warm and sustained. For the first time in many months, I felt something close to joy. Not because the fight was won, but because the love behind it had found its purpose. Standing in the glow of that moment, I understood the lesson Adrian had left me. That truth endures even when challenged, that love carries weight, even when grief threatens to crush it, and that the strength we discover in defending what is right becomes the foundation for those who follow. The storm had passed. What remained was steady and unshakable. And as I walked off the stage into the waiting arms of friends and strangers alike, I carried with me not only the memory of my son, but the certainty that his voice, his choice, and his love would never be silenced. If this story moved you, remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment to keep more stories like this alive.